Hi, boys and girls. I hope you're enjoying your summer so far. I'm here to read chapters 12 through 14 with you. Chapter 12 starts on page 26, but there are no page numbers, so make sure your book looks just like mine. While you're getting to that page, just want to refresh your memory. Remember, Roz found herself on an island. She had some river otters that had turned her on. She was walking around, seeing other animals, and some pine cones were dropping down on her. So she looked up and saw a mountain, which she crawled to the top of and spent her very first night there. That's where our chapter starts. Chapter 12, The Storm. Roz felt safe up on the mountain top. So she spent the next few days and nights perched on the peak. But everything changed one afternoon when a low-flying cloud crept up the mountain and Roz found herself surrounded by white. When the world faded back into view, she noticed more clouds floating south past the island. Then she heard a deep rumble behind her. The robot turned her head around and saw that the sky was filled with a swirling wall of darkness. Light flickered here and there. More deep rumbles. A storm was approaching, and it wasn't just any storm. It was as fierce as the one that had sent the cargo ship to the ocean floor. The wind picked up, and the first drops of rain tapped against the robot. It was time to go. Roz unclasped her hands and began sliding down the peak. Hot sparks flew from where her body scraped against the leaning slab of stone. As soon as her feet hit soil, she was off and running. The rain felt harder, the wind blew faster, the lightning flashed brighter, the thunder cracked louder. So much rainwater was falling that rushing rivers of runoff started springing up everywhere. Roz splashed down the mountain, searching through the gloom for any kind of shelter. But she should have watched where she was going. Her heavy feet slipped and tripped, and she tumbled right into a mudslide. Our robot was helpless. The river of mud whisked her downhill, slamming her into rocks and dragging her through the bushes, sweeping her straight toward a cliff. Mud was pouring off the cliff like a waterfall. Roz frantically clawed at the ground, grasping for anything she could hold on to. But the flow only carried her faster towards the edge. And just as she was about to plunge over the side, she came to a hard, sudden stop. Mud surged around her, spraying into her face and pinning her against some solid thing. She blindly felt with her hands and recognized the thick roots and trunk of a pine tree. In an instant, she was pulling herself up into the branches. The wind whipped across the mountainside, and Roz heard the familiar thump.
Interruption. Our retirement party this morning has been changed to 10:30, so we'll be meeting at 10:30 in the cafeteria. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Pinto. I'm going to reread at the top of page 29, okay? In an instant, she was pulling herself up into the branches. The wind whipped across the mountainside, and Roz heard the familiar thunk of the pine cones pelting her body. But she didn't mind them. She was just happy to be safe from the mud flow. The robot locked her arms and legs around the tree and waited for the storm to blow over. Chapter 13, The Aftermath. Daybreak, and the storm had passed, but the sounds of water were everywhere. The air was filled with dripping sounds of the mountain runoff and the sloshing sounds of the flooded streams. And then came a very different sound. It was the clanging sound made when a robot slips on a wet rock. There were quite a few clangs that morning. As Roz worked her way downhill, she scanned the aftermath of the storm. Giant mounds of mud and debris had formed below the cliffs. The island's
Miss
central...
Butler, Chuck and Caroline Son, please report to room 13. If you're still in the building, Miss Butler, report to room 13.
The island's central river had crested the banks and spilled into nearby fields and forests. Some trees had been uprooted. Others were submerged, their upper branches barely poking above the floodwaters, and their lower branches swarming with fish instead of birds. After such a storm, you might expect to see animal corpses scattered among the devastation, but the animals seemed to have survived just fine. Somehow they had known that the storm was coming, and they had found shelter long before it rolled in. Lowland creatures who had sought refuge on higher ground were waiting patiently for the water to recede. Deer were wading through the flooded fields. Beavers were busily collecting a trove of fallen branches. Geese honked in the sky before splashing down into a watery section of the forest. Clearly, the animals were experts at survival. Clearly, the robot was not. Roz was crusted with mud and grit, so she gave herself another good cleaning. But that only revealed her dents and scratches. They were really starting to add up. She hardly resembled the perfect robot who had appeared on the shore just a week earlier. The wilderness was taking a toll on poor Roz, so she felt something like relief when she spotted the quiet hole in the side of the mountain. It looked like a safe place for a robot. She stomped across the hillside and up to the cave, but never stopped to wonder what might be lurking within. Chapter 14, The Bears. Roz stomped into the cave, and then she stomped right back out. "Please stay away," said the robot to the two bears, who were now nipping at her heels. You see, when Roz stomped into the cave, she accidentally woke a brother and sister bear from their morning nap, which is never a good idea. And to make matters worse, bears have an instinct that drives them to attack when creatures run away, especially if the creature running away is a mysterious, sparkling monster. So, as the startled bears watched Roz stomping out of the cave, they really had no choice at all. They simply had to take up chase. Roz tried her best to outrun the bears. She leaped over rocks and wove through trees and stomped across the mountainside at full speed. But the bears were young and strong and fast, and the robot still had so much to learn about moving through the wilderness. She never even saw the tree root. One moment she was stomping along, and the next moment she was flying through the air and thumping down onto a rotten log. Clumps of soft wood stuck to her side as she stood and faced her attackers. Wouldn't you be afraid if two bears were charging towards you? Of course you would. Everyone would. Even the robot felt something like fear. Roz was programmed to take care of herself. She was programmed to stay alive. And as the robot watched those bears charging toward her, she knew her life was in serious danger. The bears slammed into Roz, knocking her against the trunk of a towering tree. Then one bear dove at her legs, and the other clawed at her chest. If only the robot had swung her fist or kicked her feet, she could have scared them off. One good bop in the nose would have sent them running, but the robot's programming would not allow her to be violent. Clearly, Roz was not designed to fight bears. Powerful jaws chomped her arms. Sharp claws slashed her face. A massive head rammed her chest. "Please stay away," said the robot. "Roar," said the sister bear. "Grrr," said the brother bear. And then the bears went in for the kill. But the robot had vanished. Ooh, I want to keep reading, but you're going to have to click on Miss Trimorello's chapter 15 to see what happens next. I hope you guys are enjoying the book and have a great summer.